So Abhijit is kind of stuck on a traffic. So there was some accident on a freeway, so he's kind of stuck. So probably he'll join at the end of the session. So I'll try to take you through these slides and try to, will try my best to answer all the questions. And hopefully Abhijit will join at the end of it and we'll get some more answers. So uh, this is pretty much about what we're going to do in the next release. What are the plans and how the dependent project and the external consumer who are kind of consuming it going to get affected, because there are a lot of things happening which is a big task we are undertaking, and that probably will impact and we to the other project, dependent project, and we try to minimize it as much as possible. So that's pretty much we are going to talk about today. So these are the agenda item which we are going to go through. So first we'll go through the priority work item which we planned for this, and most of the committer probably will be focused on those work item because those are the priorities for this release. And there are other items which we are kind of also want to focus, but we are looking for contributors. If out there someone want to contribute to the project, just reach out to Abhijit. He is a PTL of the project, and he'll hook you up with those items. The other major task which we are going to do in this release is, if you know, there are two designs as of now in the OpenFlow plugin. The one is the existing one, which is basically shipped as a default plugin to all the projects, and in ODL everybody is kind of using that. In a lithium release, we plan to we started working on one of the plugin, and the focus for that plugin was the performance. Okay, because we got a lot of feedback there, in terms of performance, we need a better performance from a plugin. So we took some design consideration, and based on that, we kind of come up with a new plugin, and that is far better in terms of the performance. Obviously, we need to, there is some functionality wise, we kind of did some design choices there, so there is some restriction in that sense. But the goal was to kind of get a performant plugin out there, because when you kind of deploy an enterprise kind of setup, you definitely need that. So yeah, it's a trade-off we took, and we are happy that we kind of have with that plugin, which actually gives you better performance. Other issues which are going to affect is as of now, if you remember, right, so flows you kind of install on the inventory Yang model. You have that path where nodes, inventory nodes, and then flow table and all that. So that is all we used to use an inventory model. Now what we are planning to do is we are planning to kind of come up with one model, because sometimes when people look at an inventory and a topology model, they actually get confused which one is where and why we are using inventory and not topology. Basically, eventually the topology model is something which we can use for both of the purpose. So we kind of get rid of that confusion, and just want to come together and just use the topology model as your de facto Yang model for the OpenFlow plugin. And this is not an OpenFlow plugin specific, but this is something which the controller wide initiative where we are everybody will try to move to inventory to topology model. And I think inventory model is already deprecated in the Beryllium, and Boron will remove it. So this is something which every project will have to kind of take care in their project planning. Yeah. So as of now, yeah, that's a longer discussion. I think I will come to this at the end of the session. So there is a little bit of twist there. So okay, so these are the highest priority. Let's go to the highest priority work items. First thing is migrating the lithium design. Okay, this is highest priority because we basically want to have a single plugin now, because in the last summit we got a lot of questions about you have alternate plugin and all that, and why we are using that, and why what if some project use the other one. So a lot of discussion over there. So as a project, we all committers decided to kind of move to one plugin, and for us, performance was a theme. So this is something which we want to ship to the customers and consumers. So lithium design is going to be a default plugin going forward, and for that we in this release we asked project to kind of move to the lithium design now. This migration can be bit of a, for some projects, it's probably going to be very smooth. Whoever is using a data store, for them is going to be very smooth. There's not going to be any impact as such. They just have to switch the plugin. But some of the project who actually use the RPCs and Yang notifications, that's where, they might see some hiccups, but we are not really expecting any major work for the downstream project. Because in the Beryllium release, we try to figure out these requirements which actually can hit these projects in a major way. And we are trying to address them in this release. We try to address them in some of them in a Beryllium. And we have some of the patches that are pending, which we are going to merge in a master branch. And once that is done, we'll at least bridge some of the backward compatibility issues which we actually found out in a Beryllium. So hoping that all those stuff is going to be in, then I think I'm expecting that, most of the projects, the migration is going to be smooth for them. Yeah, obviously there's some issues and all those things pop up that anyways OpenFlow plugin committers are there to kind of fix it. Second thing which we did was, in Beryllium, OpenFlow plugin are basically a cluster aware now. Okay, so we have a clustering support. Basically, both of the design has a clustering support because as of now, lithium design, the new performant design, that also has a clustering support. Thanks to Kamal, so he worked on this, and I worked on the helium design of it because that's what kind of we were planning to ship it with the Beryllium. So both of these has a clustering implementation, and both of these things because we are trying to test clustering as much as possible with the limited resources which we have in our end. We are trying to fix, maximum possible issues with that. But now it's officially out there, so people will be using it, and that's where, we are expecting some more, issues related to clustering, not specifically the OpenFlow plugin, but, the whole stack. Base platform clustering, then application clustering, OpenFlow plugin clustering, and then the application level of clustering. So overall, this is, we are expecting that we probably have to need to do some more work to kind of improve the clustering. As of now, it's pretty flexible in terms of the contract which we are giving to the applications and how we are managing a device. So we don't really put any restriction. Any device can connect to any of the controller node, or they can connect to one or more nodes. There is no strict restriction on that. But yeah, when kind of, you always you test with a certain kind of setup. You can't really, go through all the permutation and combination. That's where I think people will use it and will get some issues, and we probably have to work on, improving it, stabilizing it, and performance and scalability part of it. So some of the team, I think Cisco, they work on testing part. Brocade also does. Ericsson, we saw a lot of testing. They do a lot of testing on the clustering part of it and performance and scalability. So we got these kind of feedback from, all the vendors, and that actually helped us to kind of improve the clustering part of it. Backlog reduction. So yeah, that's another thing, because once, given the limited resources, we have at least 4 people we kind of work in OpenFlow plugin, and sometime when these major tasks come, we kind of all busy with that, and people are very aggressive in opening bugs, which is really good from project perspective, but we need someone to kind of fix also those things. So this is one of the thing which is also a highest priority for us now. So because we not need to kind of get rid of these backlog reduction. Probably some of these things we will get rid of when kind of we test everything on a lithium design, because in a master we are not going to support helium now. That's something which we're planning to deprecate it. So the recommendation is that project should move to the lithium plugin, and hopefully some of those backlog items will go off with that migration. Beryllium to boron upgradability. So this is also, this is a community-wide initiative. So some of the customers basically want that they actually deployed this OpenDaylight in their production environment, and they are now concerned about they definitely want to use the new plugin, but just give me a second. So they definitely want to use the new version of a controller because new features are coming and all that. But the only problem they face is upgradability aspect. So they are saying, okay, how to upgrade it? I have a controller that is handling my network, but I don't really have an upgradability plan. So that's a community-wide discussion that is happening, and OpenFlow plugin definitely want to participate in, and we also want to make things easier for a user so that they can migrate. If they are using plugin, it's easy for them to kind of migrate. So that's going to be another piece of work, which is going to be community-wide, but yeah, we definitely have to do from plugin side whatever we can do to kind of provide this upgradability. Then the medium priority. So inventory to topology migration. It's a medium priority, or what you say is like, there is not a, from plugin side, there is not much work involved here. Okay. Uh, as far as you grow from an inventory to a topology model, which we have right now in a plugin, that is basic, and that topology model is basically expired. Okay. And we have a new topology model that is a bit sophisticated than what we have right now. So inventory to the old topology model which we have, that migration is pretty straightforward. So there is no major chunk of work there. But old topology model to the new topology model, that's where there is a bit of work. Okay, and that's something which we are, probably will give some work to us, but that is still, that discussion need to be happen at the community level, so that, people really agree whether we really want to move to the new topology model or not, until unless there is some, some blocking way that without new topology model you can't really, you can't support some of the use cases, or project are kind of stuck and all those things. So that is something that discussion need to happen, and I think that will happen in the coming weeks, because that is something which we need to, discuss as soon as possible, so that we can come up with some plan. But inventory topology, old topology model is something which I'm expecting that this will happen in this release, and all the projects will have to do it. Migrating to new one, that's probably will, skip it, because generally when you kind of take out any of the models, you have to deprecate them. And you deprecate them, then you have to give at least one release cycle to them. And then the next release cycle, you actually remove it. So even if the topology model we want to, old topology model, we want to deprecate it, we need to kind of mark deprecated in this release, and then the next release is going to go out and it will move to the new topology model. OpenFlow resource manager for app coexistence. I think there was some discussion going on. It's going on from a last release. The valid problem here is that there are a lot of projects and they want to use one device, okay, and specifically a table 0 in that. So that's where when you multiple devices want to use it and they want to install a flows, that probably end up with a conflicting, right? So you don't really have any mechanism where you can kind of sync up applications and they decide which flow to install and all those things. This is very legacy problem. When you multiple resources trying to use one resource, you always end up with this conflict. So there is other work is going on. OpenFlow Resource Manager is, I think, that part of that, and Abhijit can probably give a more detail about it because he was kind of part of these discussions. But that's the one thing which we are actually looking for it, and hopefully we'll get some folks to kind of work on this one. Yeah, that comes to interface management. Yeah. Similar lines, yeah. So yeah, I need to get more details into it. Babijit can probably give you, but once he comes. So. Uh, that was multi-writer stuff. Yeah, that's not much because there was a lot of questions on it. So these next level of priority items is kind of, they can always make it to the highest priority if there is someone to kind of work on it. So there was some requirement related to, multi-controller, equal role pushing and all those, because as of now, in a clustering, what happens is once you connect any device to any of the cluster node, that cluster nodes will decide who is going to be master of that particular device. Once they select the master, they send this role down to the cluster, that switch, and say, I am the master of your, I am a master controller for you. So this, and the rest all is going to be a slave. There are some use cases where people are asking for, having an equal role, okay? So this is kind of under discussion as of now, but if we find some use case where this is, where the application really want that, so that is some work item where we, probably spend some time to, come up with this. OpenFlow 1.4 and 1.5 requirements. So this is kind of a, when we come to OpenFlow, when supporting the, latest version of the specs, the problem we are facing is, although we provide a support, but there is no switches out there with whom we can test, right? So either vendors have, but they have an internal support of it, and those are not available. From a community perspective, we want to support something, there is nothing against which we can test. So any of you basically use 1.4 or 1.5 you use? Okay. So yeah, so that's the plan. But we didn't really get a requirement for it. It's for us. It's obvious plan that you support the latest specs, but we did not really get any requirement that this is support we needed, because for if the support is required, we need to kind of include one more project into it, that is OpenFlow Java, and there's going to be a collaboration affair to kind of support 1.4 or 1.5. So if you need it and with the ODL, I would say just raise the enhancement so that we can put it into consideration, and let's see if we can kind of accommodate this thing and in this release. Because this requires some of the work, because there are a lot of interesting features there. Okay, so that is about supporting the new specs. Now, the next problem set for us is whether we want to go for a 1.4 or 1.5. Okay, so as per my discussion, most of the people says 1.5 is one which probably industry is going to adapt rather than 1.4. Okay, now those are all probably end up in a vague argument, because you don't really know what vendor do, right? So that's where we need some kind of feedback from our vendors what actually they are using. Okay, so if we provide 1.4 but nobody is actually using it, it's a waste of our resources, and that's where OpenFlow plugin is kind of struggling it, and we want our resources to work on a thing which actually vendor is going to use. So there are arguments in favor of 1.4, against it. So that is something which we need to discuss. But once that discussion will happen, that will happen within OpenFlow plugin community. So we'll send out all those things. We are looking for a feedback. Otherwise, probably we'll say, okay, next obvious plan is let's go to 1.4. Okay, we don't really have a strong reason to go to 1.5 until unless, and we don't really have a switches against which we can test. So that's pretty much on that. So if any of you guys require 1.4 or 1.5 support, please reach out to the OpenFlow plugin team so that we can put this into agenda. Otherwise, it might spill up to the next release. We don't really know. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of a detail of this migration. So as I said, there is a two design. The existing design, we call it Helium design, and that is as of now with Beryllium release, that is a default plugin we ship. But the alternate design, which we worked on to kind of make it a performance improvement, that is, we call it Lithium design. We call it Lithium design because it was all implemented in a lithium cycle. We call it Lithium design. And it's basically, there are a few projects who actually tested with this. So Network basically is a part of OVSDB, DIDM, LSCP, NIC, L2 switches. L2 switch, yeah, did some extension, some testing. So all these projects basically use the Lithium design, and their project was working fine. And the transition was there was no hiccup, because most of these projects basically use the data store. Okay. And the theme of this new design is basically, we put data store as your front end. Okay. So we actually won't recommend to use RPCs, because then it's like application want to take control of it. And when kind of do RPC support and the notification support, that actually kind of hamper with your performance. The way we want to design it for a high performance, that's where when we want to support Yang notification and RPCs, they actually don't give the outcome which we actually expect. We wanted a performant, and if you want to go that way, the data store is recommended interface to all the applications. So application should use the data store, because most of these details are already there. Okay, so statistics collection is folks use RPCs for statistics collection. That's for installing the flows and all those things. So there are some RPCs which we actually don't support in this one. We are adding support for them for a backward compatibility, but once those are enabled, they kind of will give you some performance hit on it. So is there any question on it? So advantages is basically better performance, and we have a test running. Thanks to Luis and Jamo, they have a performance test running where you can go and see the differences in terms of flow installation. We see some issues related to the ordering of the messages that goes to the switch, and that ordering is basically sometime you don't get it correct. In the Helium plugin, there is some issues because we use some single threaded switch where everything is kind of queued up there, and if the queuing is not proper, you get these things in unordered manner to the switch. So this is something which is fixed in a Lithium plugin. And bulk flow operations. So I think the latest we tested was 100K flows across 8 switches, and 100K flow across 10 switches works perfectly fine. You can definitely stretch it out, but this is something which is, as of now, our number is, rather than helium, is basically it goes maximum to 30 to 40K. Okay, so that, using a data store. Okay, so there is a significant improvement there, and that's, I think, that's what customer basically looking for. That if no, lithium stats are running, but the one good improvement we in lithium is done is the stats. There are a lot of stats, and some of the stats we are sending it, but we are getting no data, like aggregate stats. The aggregate stats is like, out of 9 type of stats we collect, 60% of a traffic in terms of messaging from a switch is from aggregate stats. So that is something we disabled in a Lithium plugin. That is also disabled in a Helium plugin now, so it's giving a better performance. But Lithium plugin, that is disabled. Okay, and the collection mechanism is much better compared to the Helium, because that is now embedded as a part of the plugin itself. But in a Helium, it used to use a statistics manager application that actually sits on top of the plugin, and it uses RPC to kind of send the message, get it back, and dump into an operational data store. So there is one more hop in between, a statistics manager and the switch. So that is something is now, within a plugin. So stats manager is inherently kind of part of the plugin itself, rather than having some separate application. You can switch it off if you want. If you want more performance and you think, I don't really care about the stats part of it, you can switch it off. And we are planning to, do some more kind of, announcement. There is some requirement coming along for the stats collection, and we are hoping that we can make it even better. Gaps. Okay, so this is where, project probably will be nervous. But let's see if we can do some good job there, and if the projects can migrate smoothly. The major gaps in terms of migration is, first thing, Yang notification for inventory, and the flow. Basically, if you know the protocol, OpenFlow protocol, if some error happens at the switch level, you actually report as an error, right? And internally, whatever these messages, async messages that come from a switch, we actually convert it to Yang notification, and we send it up to the northbound application, and those applications actually receive it, and they whatever application logic they want to run it, they can do it. So this flow error is very specific case. It comes when you install a flow and you get a response, right? In a Helium plugin, the way application used to do it, they install a flow and they get an error message and say, okay, my flow installation failed, right? But the point is, this is in a Lithium plugin, what we did is, that is all covered in a plugin itself. You send a flow, and the plugin itself will wait for an error. Okay, if there is an error, it will return a failure. So for the application, RPC is more deterministic now. So once you fire the RPCs, you definitely get a response back. But if the failure, it means flow installation failed. If it's passed, it means flow installation is kind of successful. And that's where, yeah, you can have a seat, please. so that's where it's more deterministic RPC now. So the application logic, if you start writing the application logic, you just call it. If you get a response back, that response is going to be deterministic. Application don't really have to write that logic again, saying whether this is a failure or not. Okay, so now I'll hand over to the main presenter. He owe me a beer in the evening, so oh, you need this. You must be tired, man.
Yeah, it's yeah.
So for them, I think, do we have flow? Packet is there. So there are few which actually we think that you can leverage it to kind of just provide a state of it. This is flow error. You don't really have to notify it because the error you call it RPC. But something like a flow remove, packet in processing, node basically, I think Louis is sitting here, so he can give you that answer because he kind of, they don't have that feeling with through installation of ordering, right? That always sometimes it fails because of, the way kind of you install it and it gets queued up, right? So let's say you want to install a globe and that actually points to a globe. You are also install a globe, right? But what if globe is not installed before the flow? The flow installation will fail, right? So that ordering needs to be maintained. That globe should first go to the switch and then the flow should go to the switch, right? That way both the operation is going to be successful. But the order is reversed. In that case, flow installation will fail because the globe is not there. Barrier never guarantee you the ordering. Barrier is to make sure that you send a barrier so that everything is processed and you get a barrier response or all the messages are processed. It does not really make sure about the ordering. If you are batching it, if you are sending, one message and then barrier message, that will make sense. That's where it's kind of work out. But the point is, now we don't really want to go that way because you are kind of overheading with one message and one barrier message, right? That's going to increase the traffic down to the switch, and that's where we don't really want to go.
So I don't know where we were with respect. Okay. Okay. So this particular slide is
something I was
okay. So then I think I'll just move on to the next slide in that case, if this is covered.
The gaps part is I think we need to go.
Yes. So I just heard you guys talking a lot about the Yang notifications, and we, I mean that I think has been covered, but the patches for this notifications, they're available on master, but we need to merge them. And these do provide the backward compatibility, but we would not recommend the applications to. On this. Sorry. We would not recommend the applications to actually use them because there are some performance implications because they're using the data change notifications as opposed to pure Yang notifications. The second thing that is not present right now, or actually was not originally present at the time of the lithium release, was this stats RPCs, and the support for this has been added as part of the bug 418 fix, and it's present in the Beryllium already. So I think the wanted state, that's where we really want the OpenFlow plugin to be, is to have the development of the OpenFlow project should be concentrated on one design rather than two designs, and that's been a main source of contention for us. We have limited resources in the project as such. The folks contributing are much lesser than usually what the work is required to be done, and it's good for us. The targets for us should be that the boron development should be completely done on only one of the designs, that is the lithium design, and support efforts should also be concentrated on one of the designs as going forward, and the helium design support should be just limited to the blocker bugs, and in some select instances some major or critical bugs. Having said that, in order for us to move to the lithium design, we do need a few. Before asking some of the projects to move, we do need some critical bugs in the lithium design to be fixed, and there's a list of issues that are being worked on right now, and we are expecting these to be fixed in the next 2 or 3 weeks or so. I mean, one of the critical bugs is the OpenFlow 1.0 support is not working right now. So, uh, so I had started this thread last week about the proposal from the OpenFlow plugin project uh, to fix all the prerequisites from the OpenFlow plugin side by March 17th, and have the dependence project migrate after that. I mean, start the migration right now, but finish it by SR2. Uh, and mm, again, there is a lot of pushback from the community side about moving this during the service releases as opposed to a full-blown release. And there are key questions regarding the API compatibility, especially regarding these Yang notifications. And for ODL projects using these, so my answer to that was, for ODL projects using these, the best would be to migrate these projects to use the lithium design methods. Some of the projects have already started this exercise, especially VTN has, the guy who just walked out. Uh, it's, it's easy to name him as opposed to people in the room. So they have already started their migration to use the lithium design specific methods if they are already, if they were using those old methods. For the consumers of OpenDaylight, which are outside of the OpenDaylight projects as such, I mean the options would be, you could continue using the helium design. The second option could be you could this backward compatibility patches, and the third option would be to migrate to the lithium design methods. We are not actually going with this because we have come to understanding that we will go with the alternative, which is and this slide was done before before I had done the alternatives, before we had come to the understanding. And the alternative for us right now that we are going for is we should try to keep this time frame as much as possible. Like in the people start migrating towards the lithium design as soon as possible, and have it a particular milestone inside of boron release. I think I've not actually thought exact milestone number is which one it will correspond to, but say by April end or May end, if we have all of the projects migrated to the lithium design, it will make the development efforts a lot easier, and have the projects migrate only in the boron cycle, while we keep the helium design throughout the beryllium service releases. And this way it will not have any disruption to the users. We will be fixing only the critical issues on the beryllium, on the helium side of the beryllium service release. So I think I'll just pause for a while for any questions about this. So the key idea is that we will do the migration during the boron release. For the beryllium, we will keep using the helium design and for the service releases. I think that's what the community wanted anyway. So.
We don't have an idea today or where we're gonna start the migration and then the boron.
I think we can do it as soon as possible. We actually want to, address the known issues first, so that, because once people start migrating and they still see the known issues, for them they're kind of stuck, right? So at least the known issues is something which we can fix, and we can ask project to, start migrating on it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should review weekly these critical issues in lithium, so when we get maybe not all, but most of them addressed, but the most important, then we can start.
Yeah.
Not asking actually. We should probably change asking the OpenFlow
Y- Yes, and we've had, I mean, we have been discussing throughout the project about how to go about this migration plan. And one possibility would be to have the projects, I mean, have the OpenFlow plugin itself switch the default to uh, mm, the lithium design. Uh, there are some risks associated with that because things will start breaking. One other suggestion by Anil was that let's have a patch which changes this default, uh, and but that patch is not actually merged. But the projects can pick up this particular patch, test out their changes, make sure that their project is actually lithium design compatible. And once all of the projects have found that it is working, then we move the default.
So they build the patch, then they build their own.
They build their own distro.
Yeah, so they don't really have to do any change in their project, right? So they just get this back from OpenFlow plugin, they locally build the OpenFlow plugin and start using this for the
Yeah.
distribution. So that way anyway it will pick up the default for them and they'll see what things are breaking for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did we talk about the inventory to topology?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, great.
Yeah. Yes.
So regarding OpenFlow plugin, are there any benchmarks done how the scalability, how many switches it can scale to?
Yes, and the guy who has done them are.
Next to you is doing that.
So today we are doing continuous integration tests, mostly to verify whenever we get some regression, some patch. We have a fixed test that tests up to 500 switches.
500.
500 switches. I mean, it's not that we cannot do more. Probably we can do more, but we stop at 500.
So I think,
So you are simulating each node with the
Yes. We have that kind of test. We have another test for flows. We have another test for what do we have for links, the following links, number of clusters. Yeah.
This depends on the testing criteria.
Yeah.
Even my experience in personal experiments with unit testing was thousand switches to 4,000. But with lithium ion network theory, lithium and there are constraints there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The plugin is supposed to be the optimal.
well, connection management, definitely,
Yeah.
we improve that, but whether it will increase number of switches or not, that is something we need to look at. With the helium plugin, I think the person, I think he did some testing for this, and I think for his, in his environment, I think he reached till 2000 switches. This is the test which he did. So that's the highest number which we have from any external person who kind of did this testing. So
So how much is
now,
the lithium? Because you guys were doing.
I think she has not tried the lithium. Yeah. Yeah.
We are getting. Oh yeah. We miss a dashboard, and this is what I had. Yes. We have a lot of results of all these different tests we are doing for OpenFlow and other plugins, but today it's kind of ugly because all these are in Jenkins. We have some portal, some wiki, not even portal, some wiki where they are listed. So if you search for OpenDaylight performance, I was checking the other day, and then you find this page right away. Right, exactly. Half of the page is outdated because it's like result we had before for Helium. The first part of it is Beryllium. So it's only the first part. I actually update that lately, like putting Beryllium, and this is all releases. But still, it doesn't look nice because you need to go link by link and see what is, instead of having a fancy dashboard. Yeah, we need some kind of dashboard. So if anybody in this room is know how to do a dashboard.
Planning for internship projects, right?
Yeah.
It's around the dashboard, so where we can publish all those details. So I think hopefully this will come up in this way.
Oh.
So we know per switch how much memory more is approximately consumed in OpenFlow project
First switch,
per switch.
well, first switch there is like that and all those, that's going to be very minor. But the point is, first switch there are a lot of things come, right? Are we, if we are not consuming the cost of data, it's so very minimal. So it's just a connection we keep. There is nothing else which we
Yeah,
keep as a metadata,
Flow
right?
is kind of that. If you start to add flows, it's more statistics, more
Which is,
Like,
source by itself it doesn't have much, but if you start to flow down in something,
but the statistics also for, I mean, for the sake of debate, if we don't store the statistics, so real time it will get the statistics and it will have keep alive, I guess. So
it's just a connection to the switch. There's no metadata that we internally store in a cache. The only thing which we store is, whenever we have a connection, the only thing that plugin is storing a data is store saying this node is now available, and these are the kind of metadata. It's like basically details of the switch, vendor, description, all those things.
Yeah.
That is something we store, and the node connector information that is being fetched and stored. There's a minimal data that we fetch per switch and store in the configure. So internally we don't really maintain any cache. It's just going to be our connection object. That's the minimal memory you are going to have.
so it is pretty lightweight.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I think the supporting number of switches is not always bound by the memory. It's all about contention and what kind of queuing you actually internally create. It also depends on that.
So it will also have very firm CPU or the compute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like you create multiple threaded to handle the switches, and you have a queue, then you have a context switching, and all those things coming to the CPU, and then the memory part comes later on. Right?
Then the first switch or
Yeah, I think in the lithium design, that's what the design is. So that's how we are kind of solving the ordering problem here. Okay, so all the messages kind of go to the queue,
Yeah.
first switch queue, and in order.
Yeah, I think in the Helium design it was we had this entire shared queue. So
I think I need to.
yeah, there's not much left.
natural limit domain index.
well, I don't know. Capacity of the queue can
Capacity of the queue into number of switches will limit the memory.
Limit the memory, but it's not that we are kind of allocating a big stuff. But the point is, you need a queuing to kind of reduce the back pressure, right? And the kind of if you want to give a performance design where you want this to 100K of a flows, it's 3 seconds or 4 seconds you do, and 100K flows that is short on a queue system. That's where you need some back pressure handling, and that's where you need to help on queue size. So having big queue size is fine as well as it's not least, right? So if you kind of keep changing up a queue, you're fine, right? So
So is there any way to configure the queue?
our queue sizes are pretty much static as of now. Okay, but there is some improvement is required, but we need to see use case by use case whether we really get to somewhere which we could rethink about it. So as of now, it's not configurable because the user don't really have an idea how to configure it. You give a knob to someone who just keep changing it and don't know it. It's a risky proposition. So
Let's go this way. I agree.
yeah, as I was saying, right, if somebody asks me that I want to configure it this way and they have a pretty much good idea about how to kind of configure it, they have to provide a knob. But the point is, more knobs you give, that once you have a knob, you need to know how the whole system works, right? Because apparently you will be just, throwing dark and it's dark, and sometimes it will hit, sometimes it won't. So that exercises are not useful in the process, right? until unless you look at the use case and say, okay, this is, I think this is we should provide where we, user can have no deterministic guess about how to configure it, then I think it's good to provide those now.
But it also has a bearing on proactive versus reactive. Suppose that we are going to use controller in the reactive mode. Then the large queue size is probably not needed.
Oh, well, that queue size is for, incoming messages and outgoing messages also, right? So I think that queue size is not, at least still 500 switches, we have not seen any problem with the increase of the memory. Now we see that when you need a large scale, you need to deploy your controller with a large memory, right? So we need more RAM and you need more CPU. So that's how you go about when you go to scale. Queues, yeah, definitely there must be some use cases where you see, okay, this is not appropriate or something, but yeah, you need to kind of listen to those use cases, right?
And maybe the thing we could do is have this parameters as a for the tuning, but not actually available to the user, the queue size.
Oh, well, parameter is there to tune, then you look at user.
Yeah.
Difficult to configure. I understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. My point is, if somebody don't have an insight about how this knob is going to react to them in what scenario, the knob is of no use.
Yeah.
But if they know that if I set this value to this is what is expected from a plugin, those are deterministic knobs which we can provide, right? So we don't really want to just put some random value and see it works, right? So customers can know, right?
But what kind of queue you are speaking about?
Is the per switch queue, messaging and
Message queue.
that's configurable?
Yeah.
No, that is
Oh, no.
The RPC quota per switch is kept around 20,000, and that is configurable from the configure.
Okay.
That can be done.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense because as developers would need to find to tune this value as opposed to
So there are
end users.
many kinds of queues inside, but just one of them is configured, that is the RPC.
It's basically flow message and
But that means
Flow, packaging, all kinds of it goes to RPC. That is good for that. That queue.
right, but then that is coming from northbound of the
So yes, that comes from northbound of the control. What comes southbound is the
packet.
notification broker. That is also gone.
What about the packet out?
Packet out is the RPC quota queue. Packet in is the notification broker queue.
Yeah, sorry.
So both are gone.
I mean, from controller point of view.
From the controller point of view, it is packet out, which you are pushing out to the switch, right? That comes via the RPC port. That is there.
Right.
And what comes to the controller,
Yeah.
that packet in from the switch, that goes via the notification broker. That's also configured. So both are configured.
So I think I think we are out of the time, but what I'd like to also mention is that we would be definitely encouraging people to come and participate in our meetings, which are on Mondays 9 a.m. Pacific, and also contribute code towards the OpenFlow plugin project. That's and hope we can have some of you contribute and eventually become committers on the project.